Nikko Jenkins was a Colorado citizen who grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and was born on September 16, 1986, to David McGee and Lori Jenkins. He had 6 siblings, and 5 of them were female, while 1 was a male. David McGee, who happened to be Nikko's father, was mostly responsible for Nikko's upbringing and played a big part in his life. As for his mother, well, you could say she was responsible for his downbringing. Still wondering why? Well, Nikko's mother, Lori Jenkins, was in prison serving a 10-year federal sentence for being an accessory in a felony. This could mean nothing more than the fact that her son grew up to be like his mother, or possibly even worse. Well, she got what she deserved, as 5 to 6 years have been added to her 10 years imprisonment for providing ammunition for her son, which was used in his son's killing spree.
She's also responsible for lying to investigators about buying ammunition that was ultimately used in Nikko's killing spree.
This sounds like a befitting story for someone responsible for her son's downbringing and severely facing the punishments for it. Without a doubt, Nikko Jenkins faced a harsh and unstable upbringing, experiencing various physical abuse right when he was so young. He was physically abused as a child, both by his parents and family members, and it was a normal scenario for him. His parents alone weren't the cause of his harsh and unstable upbringing, as previously stated. This was also as a result of his family background. His family has an extensive criminal background, dating long back to his great-great-grandfather, who allegedly has up to 38 of his descendants convicted of one crime or the other. That is crazy, right? Well, it is. Nikko's family seems to be one hell of an unorganized crime family. Nikko's family seems to have the nature of violence embedded in their blood, and Nikko is not an exception. Let's go on a short tour of some of the families of Nikko and the crimes committed by them. Let's start with Nikko's uncle, Warren Levering, alleged to be 57 years of age. He was a felon just released from prison in Oklahoma. He has fathered 7 kids with 6 different women in 5 states. The dude was probably trying to be King Solomon. Nikko's 2 brothers were charged with felony, and 1 was currently on parole. Out of Nikko's siblings, 4 have been arrested in the past years. One of his sisters, 23-year-old Erica Jenkins, is a convicted felon. Nikko's younger sister, also known as Lori Sales, is also charged with a felony. A third sister of Nikko was also convicted of a felony and got out of bail around the time Nikko's murder was made known to the public. What is even more surprising, and she has 3 children, all were under 7 when they were placed in child protective custody. This was nothing but a short version of the history of the deadly Nikko. Well, Nikko didn't take too long to start exhibiting his violence and criminal traits when he was just 7 years old. He came to school with a loaded handgun, which prompted the police to put him in foster care, as no one was injured in this situation. While in foster care, he goes under the supervision of a therapist, and he starts out of his mind of having the urge to harm himself and others. He was just 8 years old, and he already had suicidal thoughts flowing through his head. He got kicked out of different foster homes to another as he got more violent and threatening to other children there. This shouldn't even be considered a childhood, but more of an adulthood. He was going through more than a lot when he was barely 10 years old. It didn't take so long before he joined a gang and started carrying a weapon around at that time. He was convicted of many offenses after joining his first gang, which included aggravated assault, use of a deadly weapon, arson, robbery, and weapon charges, to name a few. He was accused of this crime not only once or twice, but multiple times. Fast forward to when he was 30 years old, he was convicted of committing 4 murders in a span of 2 weeks. 3 of the murders were 3 men who go by the name of Juan Uribe Pena, Jorge C. Cajiga Ruiz, and Curtis Bradford. The 4th murderer was a young mother who goes by the name Andrea Kruger. The murder committed by Nikko was known to be one of the worst killing sprees in the history of the state. The murder was committed with the help of Nikko's mother, his sister, cousin, and uncle, which is proof they were definitely generational criminals. These ferocious murders took place within a month after his release from prison for a car hijacking case that was committed while he was just 15 years of age. He was sentenced to 18 years for the car hijacking case, but was released after serving 10.5 years. This murder might probably not have taken place if he had been left to serve his full term in jail. Apparently, while Nikko was in prison, he wasn't allowed to be with his fellow inmates. He was considered too dangerous for them. This prompted him to be in solitary confinement during his jail term. He was caught making a weapon out of a toothbrush, getting tacks from his inmates, and a lot more dangerous activity. The police made quite a huge mistake releasing Nikko, as it was obvious he needed help, and stated he might harm people if he was let out, but he was abruptly ignored. During the time he was released was when he got his face tattooed and scared, creating a kind of killer face. He expressed that was what he wanted his face to look like now, which was very absurd. Before Nikko confessed to his crime, he stated he was innocent, but confessed afterward, saying the reason was for him to be excused from the court hearing. He confessed to his crime after an 8-hour interview, which included that the death was a sacrifice to Apophis, a deity in the Egyptian religion. He claimed the deity did possess him, and the only way he could get rid of terrible headaches brought by the demons was to kill people. This sounds more of a fantasy until he starts exhibiting antics such as speaking in tongues, howling, and hysterical laughter, which are acts and behaviors commanded by the Apophis. The first murder committed by Nikko Jenkins was similar to the second crime, as it was committed at the same spot and on the same day. The name of the first victim was Juan Uribe Pena, who was 26, and the second victim's name was Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, who was 29. Both events took place on a pickup truck by the swimming pool at Spring Lake Park near 18th and F. Saint on August 10, 2013, where they were both shot in their heads. Before the night of the murder, the exact day that Nikko was released from jail, a welcome party was held in his favor and a weird and bizarre gift was handed to him by his uncle. For someone just getting out of jail for car hijacking, it is shocking why his first gift was a shotgun. What was even surprising was the fact that Nikko wasn't released on parole, which made it absolutely normal to have a gun immediately after his release. Parole would at least have restricted him from having a shotgun or firearms within a good amount of time after his release from prison, but the case was the exact opposite. On the night of the welcome party, he made a declaration he would love to move to Florida, commit some robberies in Florida, and use the money to move to Cuba, where he would join the military in Cuba and fight the USA. Well, for him to move to Florida, he decided he needed some money for that, and he expressed he would commit some robberies in his hometown, which was Nebraska, and his family, known for their act of crime, made it easy for him. His sister and cousin expressed their interest in joining him in performing the robbery. Nikko sketched out the plan that both his cousin and sister would go to a local bar and pose as a prostitute, promise unusual favors to two men, and drive them to the location he gave them, and Nikko, as the instigator, would rob them as soon as they got to the location. At first, it was supposed to be just a robbery, until Nikko committed his other grievous act. The event took an extremely different turn when Nikko shot them immediately after he came into contact with them. It was alleged that the man didn't struggle, as he didn't even try to rob them in the first place, but shot them immediately and robbed them afterward. It was almost as if robbing them was a second option, but killing them was a top priority for him. The fun fact about this killing was that both the victims were killed by the shotgun gifted to Nikko by his uncle, who goes by the name Warren Levering. It was impossible to know if it was pre-planned by Nikko, his sister, and his cousin to murder both the victims, or if it was a thought in a blink by Nikko due to the voices he claimed to be hearing from the Egyptian god he was serving. He was an unpredictable man and had lots of crazy thoughts going to his head, and thus, it's hard to pinpoint if he had it all in his mind to commit the crime. It took a while before the police found the two dead bodies in a white Ford F-150 pickup parked near a city swimming pool in Spring Lake Park. Nikko didn't get on the radar for this crime and was living his life as he was not in any way related to the two victims. There was absolutely no reason to kill them. He just felt or probably felt it would be nice or would turn out good, but it obviously didn't. As if that wasn't enough, Nikko proceeded on his killing spree, and this time around, it was a friend or someone you might consider as his prison mate. It all started when Nikko organized another party and was known for his habit of disclosing his intention of wanting to commit robbery, probably to let people know his intention or to recruit people to help him. On the night of his party, he made it known he would be committing another robbery, and this time around, Curtis took interest. Before the robbery took place, Nikko and Curtis were seen taking a picture together and displaying some kind of hand signs. What the signs signify was unknown. It was unclear if it was a gang sign or probably a sign of a snake, but whatever it was sure Curtis didn't know the picture would be the last one he would be taking. The picture was uploaded to Facebook not long ago, before the crime was committed. While Nikko and Curtis were on their way to the robbery, Nikko's sister joined too. On getting to the destination of their alleged robbery location, suddenly Nikko's sister shoots Curtis, but Curtis is injured and lying half dead on the floor. It was unknown the reason why she killed him, but she was in a frenzy mode and felt enthused. It was her first kill. Nikko, on the other hand, was infuriated at his sister. He wasn't infuriated because his sister killed Curtis. He was infuriated because he wished he was the one who had killed him. This instigated Nikko to shoot him one more time in the back, which later ended Curtis's life right on the spot. Curtis lost his life and was left lifelessly on the road. This event took place on August 18th. The body of Curtis Bradford was found lying lifelessly on the ground in a garage at 18th and Clark Saint by a man returning home from a night shift at a convenience store. He then called the police, where the police arrived to find 2 bullets in Curtis's back. It was later revealed that a picture was posted on Facebook by Curtis before he was murdered. Curtis's murder seems planned because he was handed an unloaded gun, and this makes it look like they were planning to ambush him. Nikko was not fully suspected of this killing as well, because he wasn't arrested and things were still going quite well for him, and he was living his life. Nikko Jenkins's 4th and final victim was a young mother named Andrea Kruger. She was in her 30s, a mother of 3, and never knew she would be leaving her kids alone so soon and forever. The murder of Andrea took place on August 21st at about 2:15 a.m. There was actually a concert going on in Omaha, and Nikko saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rib people. People would definitely be coming out of the concert, and that would be the perfect spot for him to rob people, according to him. Nikko decided he needed another car that could fit with the concert for him to avoid being unsuspicious, and he had it at the back of his mind to hijack someone's car while at it. The robbery this time featured 3 people: Nikko's sister Erica, Nikko's cousin Kristen, and Nikko's uncle Warren, who gave Nikko a gun at his welcome party. This is nothing short of a family affair robbery, and they headed to their destination. They were observing and looking for a car they could rob for their operation before they sighted an SUV. The SUV happened to belong to Nikko's 4th victim, Andrea Kruger. They followed Andrea until she stopped her car. Nikko jumped out of his car, dragged Andrea out of her car, and shot her multiple times. He got into her car with his uncle Warren, and they drove off alongside their original car, which had Nikko's cousin and sister in it. Yet, another soul has lost her life just for having a good car and not obviously trying to cause an issue with Nikko in his attempt to hijack her car. The police got to the scene on hearing of a gunshot, but it was already late as the deed was already done. The alleged robbery was probably carried out, and Andrea Kruger's car was burnt after the operation by Nikko's uncle Warren. It was still very unclear about the mysterious man behind each murder, as they weren't just connecting. Nikko was still living his life and was not suspected, not even once, until this happened. 10 days after the heinous murder committed by Nikko Jenkins, which was on the 30th of August, Nikko was arrested on an unrelated case. He was arrested based on a terroristic threats charge, and it was in no way connected to the previous murders. The threats were made to his girlfriend, threatening to kill her, and to send demonic spirits to her house, which was obviously the Apophis. Nikko Jenkins's girlfriend didn't take this lightly, got terrified for herself and her mum, and reported him to the police, which led to the arrest of Nikko. During the investigation, the police had some doubts as to whether he was the one they were looking for the mass murder being committed. They had to restart their investigation again, and while at it, they checked CCTV footage of where the ammunition Brennecke Classic Magnum 12 gauge, commonly known as deer slugs, was used in one of the murders. It turned out their hunch was right, as the ammunition was bought by Nikko Jenkins' mother. Upon the police discovery and Nikko being under their custody, it was a win-win situation for the cop, as investigating and questioning Nikko would be easier. On the 3rd of September, he was questioned by the police officer, in which he denied the crime abruptly. He denied his involvement and acted like he didn't know anything about the murder. A month later, he accused his sister and cousin of the murder, and he was simply providing intelligence for them. Then, he confessed that he actually did commit the murder after an interview that lasted for 8 hours, and he claimed he did it under the influence of his god Apophis. His speech changed again, telling them he committed the murders because they should have confined him and not let him out of the prison. He was heard saying in a lot of his interviews, "I warned you. I told you I would kill a lot of people if you let me out." It surely doesn't justify his actions, but to him, that was more than a justification. He isn't trying to take justifications for his murder, but trying to pin the blame on someone else. The first was his sister and cousin, the second was the deity, and the third was the police structural system. The exact reasons for the killings were unknown, as it was without any partially known intent, such as revenge, family, or personal issues. It was unknown, but the fact that he confessed to his crime was more than enough for the police to arrest him. After his arrest, Nikko wrote a letter wishing to plead guilty to all counts in the 4 murders, saying was only trying to protect the Apophis kingdom, and the only way he could stop the god from possessing him was if he offered dead bodies to him. He went further to file a lawsuit against the state seeking $24.5 million for wrongfully releasing him when he was still meant to be in prison. He claimed he told the officer he had been gearing various voices from Apophis and warned them repeatedly, but it was all to no avail. He shifted the blame for the killings from his head to the correctional officials, as he believed all his acts were due to influence from his schizophrenia, which is a mental disorder of disorganized thinking, delusions, and typically hearing voices. He stated he had bipolar disorder and was also diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder. With this in mind, the judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation, and it was concluded that Nikko Jenkins had antisocial personality disorder, which was a perpetual violation of the rights of others. It was stated that Nikko was faking his psychotic symptoms, and after long years of going back and forth on his disorder issue, he was eventually declared competent to stand trial. An administered IQ test was conducted for him, and he scored 68, which made him competent to stand trial. He was allowed to represent himself during the trial under the guidance of Apophis. During the court sessions, Nikko was seen exhibiting and displaying lots of antics, which were claimed to be under the command of the Apophis. After several cases, he was found guilty of all 4 murders and was sentenced to death on August 11, 2014. The date was delayed indefinitely, and it was held that he had to determine whether he was capable of understanding the death penalty in front of him. He was ordered to be housed at a psychiatric hospital, but the hospital was rejected due to lack of security at the hospital. He then agreed to come treat him while in prison. 3 years passed, and he was eventually sentenced to death by a 3-judge panel.
Therefore, this panel finds that the death penalty is appropriate, should be, and is hereby given for each of the 4 murders by the defendant. It is therefore the sentence of this court as follows. At case CR 13-2768, count 1, murder in the first degree, a class 1 felony, death. Count 2, use of a deadly weapon, firearm to commit a felony, a class 1C felony, 45 to 50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7, and 10. Count 3, possession of a deadly weapon by a prohibited person, Class 1D felony, 45 to 50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7, and 10, and count 2.
As of now, he is awaiting the death penalty, and his death sentence has been postponed due to his mental illness. He was alleged to have made several self-mutilations. He carved 666 on his forehead, tried to slice his tongue for him to look like a snake. The cut he sustained required 27 stitches. It was recently alleged he is trying to cut himself up to try to look insane in order to avoid the death penalty, which could be close to the truth. But there is no denying that he is going through a lot with his mental health. In May 2017, he was sentenced to 450 years in prison and also the death penalty, which is strange because there is no point in sentencing one to lengthy years in prison when he already has the death penalty. In conclusion, the rest of the family was also charged for their part in the assault crime. Nikko's mother got 10 years in prison for buying ammunition used to commit the crime. The sister was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Curtis Bradford and taking part in some of the robberies. Nikko's cousin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for his involvement in the robbery committed by Nikko. Warren, the uncle of Nikko, was sentenced to 4 years in prison for involvement in the murder of Andrea Kruger. Following the case, in April 2020, the Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal. As of now, he is still in prison receiving treatment, and his death sentence is still unknown.